After e4, e5, knight c3, knight f6, and f4, we have the Vienna Gambit. And now the main line goes with d5. Now the move I recommend to play in order to deflect from the expected theory, because what the black player expects something like f takes e5 and then knight takes e4, I suggest to play e takes d5, and I'm going to offer a repertoire about this. So if you follow each one of these videos, you will know exactly what to do with each line. So here we just took a pawn. There's plenty of options now, which is basically one of them is e4, the other one is pawn takes f4, and the other one is knight takes back. We're going to go through knight takes back, which is the most popular. The reason is that the black player here is thinking to go for something that everyone of a certain level knows, but I'm going to provide you with a computer repertoire to avoid a disaster. Not only that, it's all still theory, because the move now, surprisingly enough, is pawn takes pawn in e5, and now white is clearly a pawn up with no compensation by black. All that white needs to do is just know this following line. So what is it that we've just left? We left the possibility for black to do this move. Knight takes knight, and now the queen is able to go to h4 because the black player removed the knight from c3, which was protecting e4, and now we have to take with the b pawn, and even more surprisingly, but now white has a leading development. We got our pieces able to be developed as soon as black plays queen h4. This is a typical move that a lot of beginners will fall into this silly mistake, which is g3 and then queen e4 check, which wins the rook. So of course g3 is not possible, and king f2 is also not possible. We have to play king e2, and this is what puzzles a lot of black players, a lot of white players that are going through this Vienna Gambit, because it looks terrible. But black here is not better than white. White is absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong. And if you watch this video and all the next ones, you will master this position. So let's go through the first option. Well, I'm going to go through bishop g4 check and also through queen e4 check. Let's start with queen e4. So queen e4 check. Now the king goes to f2, already beginning the process of manual castling. Why will black play queen e4, by the way, in order to recapture the pawn in e5? But this is actually not working because, okay, queen takes pawn. Now white continues the development. Knight f3 attacking the queen. White will soon enough play bishop b5, rook e1, and these kind of moves, bishop a3 as well. The development of the white player will be excellent. So the only move I've seen the opponent play in this situation is queen c5. There's not really any other move that makes much sense, because you don't want to obstruct the development of your own bishops, and queen c5 is giving a check, and the black player knows that white wants to build the center with d4, and so queen c5 is the best move, because after d4, which by the way is happening anyway, black can take another pawn. White has now full control of the center, and if black leaves with the queen, then the game will continue, but white is ahead in development, and he will be able to manually castle after rook e1. And so after bishop e5, rook e1, the development of the bishop in a3, the white king is completely safe, and the black player will not be able to castle ever. So after queen takes c3, for example, it's already lost for black. Bishop b5 check. A bunch of ways to block, let's say c6, knight c6, bishop d7. None of them works. Let's start with bishop d7. Now white continues with bishop d2 attacking the queen. And the queen has to go where? Well, the only square available, well, will be queen b2 or queen a3. So after queen a3, white continues with rook a1, check, and after bishop e7 to block, white continues with bishop to g5. And now the knight cannot go into the defense of the e7 square because we can just take it, and we have rook and bishop attacking together, so black will have to give up a lot of material. So after the only move which seems to be okay, which is f6, stopping the attack of the bishop on e7, white continues with this move, bishop to c1 attacking the queen. And now the queen has two main options, which is basically queen a5 and queen d6. Queen going to c3 loses to queen e2. We have this attack now on e7, and this is unstoppable. While black will have to sacrifice a lot of material. So if queen goes to a5, same thing, because the queen is leaving the diagonal of the bishop, so queen e2 wins the game for white. Black now can go to queen b4, but it's just too late. White will play a4, and whatever black does, nothing stops the white player from playing bishop a3. The a4 move was in order to allow the bishop to go to e3, protected by the rook, and give more attack over this diagonal. So best move by black, according to the engine, this is an engine move, is king to d8 to get out of trouble, to get out of the diagonal. White now continues with c3 in order to deflect the queen. If queen takes e3, then we will have access to e7. And after queen goes to d6, now white can play bishop a3, and it's game over. In this position, after bishop c1, what if the queen goes to d6 already? Then white continues with a4, so that's the motive. The idea is this move, bishop to a3. So if, for example, if the bishop were to take our bishop in b5, we will completely ignore it and just play bishop a3 anyway. And yeah, so white will win. One idea that black could have is to play c5 and then support it with b6. Well, after c5, white still does bishop a3, and after b6, it looks like the black player is building some sort of extra defense over this diagonal, but then we're going to simply take, and we don't care about a swap of queens. This doesn't release the pressure. Queen takes, then rook takes back, and now nothing will stop us from opening the line because the bishop in e7 is pinned. And yes, so swapping pieces doesn't release the pressure. Bishop takes, then okay, we take back. And what happens if the king tries to unpin the bishop? Then we will make use of our excellent developed pieces. Rook takes, king takes. Then this allows us a discover check, like pawn takes, and then the pawn will be able to go in b7. This is check, and then win more material. So let's make a recap so we can familiarize with this insane line. Knight f6 and then f3, Vienna Gambit on the board. Main line is d5, and we take the d5 pawn. Knight takes, and now we win a pawn in e5, completely careless of this typical pattern that so many players from all types of rating go for. Knight takes, and then pawn takes, queen h4 check, king e2, steel theory. Queen check, king f2, and now the queen recaptures the pawn. Knight f3 attacking the queen. Queen c5 with a check, and the fork attacking c3, and we allow it, d4. Black takes the pawn in c3. Allow bishop b5 check. Let's keep going for a moment about still about bishop d7. Now bishop d2. Let's go through queen b2 this time. Now white continues with queen e2 check, and after the bishop blocks, the game is over after rook h to e1. There's double attack here. Again, the knight in c6 will just be taken. What happens if black defends with queen a3, putting more defense over e7? Then white continues with rook a to b1, and the idea is that now the bishop is going to b4, obstructing the queen, not allowing to defending e4 anymore. E7 anymore. The only thing that black seems to be able to do is take the bishop, which comes with an attack on the queen, but even then we're just going to check. And now we have access to b7 with an attack on the rook. White has no weaknesses at all in his territory. So a few moves ago, after bishop blocks in d7 and bishop d2 attacking the queen goes to b2, queen e2. What happens if black doesn't want to block in e7 with the bishop in order to avoid the whole pinning situation, and goes to d8? Now white takes the bishop, and taking back with the king will be terrible because that will allow the infiltration of the knight, the check here, and white is just so much better. This is a suicide. Taking back with the knight runs into rook a to b1, and nothing stops the white player from going to b7 with the rook. Double up the rooks. Position is evaluated something like +6 or +7, I think, here. So we can just move on to the next lines. So back at this position, after d4 and queen takes the pawn in c3, we give a check. We mentioned we will have to go through knight to c6. So this is met by queen e1 check, forcing a swap of queens. Queen takes, rook takes comes with a check, and after bishop to e7, white continues with d5, attacking the knight. and well, the knight is pinned. So after a6 only move, basically the idea is to give up a piece for another piece, of course. White takes the knight with the bishop, check, pawn takes back, and now white plays bishop a3. And here we are again. Again, in this position, after knight to c6, white forces a swap of queens, queen takes, rook takes, comes to the check. What happens after king to d8? Unpin the knight and doesn't pin his own bishop. White continues with knight to g5, threatening the fork in f7, and yeah, very strong check. This is blockable only with the move bishop to e6, but this is now met by d5, and white is winning the game. If the bishop leaves this diagonal, then the knight will infiltrate in f7 with a check. It's game over, well, because of too much material. And if the bishop takes, then rook to d1, pinning the bishop, and idea of c4, knight f7 will remain a threat. The best move here is a computer move, which is basically knight to d4. It's going to be very difficult to find for the black player. It is a computer move, and a very strong player, fairly strong player, will be able to find it, I suppose. The idea is that the knight's attacking the bishop and then eventually going back to d6, blocking the rook, maybe putting more defense over. The most accurate way to play here is rook takes. This allows bishop c5 pinning the rook, and the best move now is bishop e3. Now the rook is no longer pinned, so I will be able to take. So after bishop takes and bishop takes, white is winning this endgame. So one more recap, so that by the end of this video we know exactly how to play it. Knight takes back and then pawn takes. Knight takes, pawn takes, the b pawn takes, and then queen h4, king e2, queen a4, queen e4 check with an attack on the pawn. We allow that. Knight f3, queen c5, and we also allow black to take the pawn in c3. Now bishop e5. This can be blocked with c6. It looks the most aggressive way because it blocks and it also comes with an attack, but we're going to continue the development. Rook e1 check, and after bishop e7, rook e3 comes now, keeping the pin and also attacking the queen. Plenty of things to do, all of them failing. If the queen leaves this diagonal, then the idea remains of queen e2, putting more attack over this file, the e file. This crazy line goes on with queen takes rook, and now white can take the bishop in e7. If king takes back, bishop a3, and then we pick the queen very quickly, and it's game over. And the most accurate way to play would be to move the king somewhere else. Well, king to d8 runs into the winning move, rook to f7, which allows bishop g5 to come. It's a nightmare, and yeah, there's no way out for black. The other move will be king to f8 instead. This runs into queen e2 with the idea of reaching e8, and after bishop to d7, blocking the possibility to go to e8, seemingly. Well, now white simply continues with rook e8 anyway. This certainly is, the Vienna Gambit certainly is one of the craziest type of games. Rook e8 check, bishop takes, and now bishop a3 check, king g8, and this is game over. So back at this position, after rook e3, as we mentioned, the queen goes to another diagonal. Is too dangerous because now white will continue with bishop to c4, saving the bishop and still threatening bishop to a3, because the bishop in e7 is pinned and the queen might take the bishop, but then we take back and black has no compensation. It's a rook and a bishop for the queen, but the position is also much better for white. So after queen to d8, then bishop a3 wins the game. There is no saving for black in this situation. So what happens after this move, which seems acceptable, which is bishop e6? Now we simply take the bishop. That's the best move. White takes back. The rook can now take back, and yeah, the position is evaluated something about +8. I mean, the material is basically equal, but white has an idea of playing queen e2, and bishop g5, and then the rook is coming to e1. It's just too much for black to resist.